Today's how-to video is how to glue up a board properly. If you look at what we have in front of us, we have 3 separate boards. So most times a tree only grows so wide in diameter. The average board that you're ever going to get is usually between 4 inches and can be up to 12 inches. And a lot of kids think that if they go in the back and they want to glue up something that would be very wide so that they can make their project, whether it be a footstool, whether it be a tabletop, whether it be the base to a cabinet, or whether it be the top to a table, you need to glue boards up because no trees are usually that wide. So if you go in the back of the room and there happens to be a 12-inch wide board that looks like that board there, and you're like, oh, that'll be perfect. Well, that's not really the case. If you take a board like that and decide that you're going to use it for your top and you don't glue it and it's one solid board, it came out of one chunk of the tree, what's going to happen is over time that board's going to expand and it's going to contract. And what will happen is it will warp. And when it warps, the tabletop is basically garbage. There's almost no way you're going to be able to get a warp out of a board that would be this wide. As you can see on this one, there's a glue joint right here. There's a glue joint right here. So this is actually glued up with 3 separate boards. They're all about 8 inches in width. If you look at this one over here, this is a glue up between 3 different boards. There's one here, one here, 4 different boards and one here. So that has 4 different boards that they glued up. What we want to do is we want to take these 3 boards right here and we want to glue those. So the one thing you have to pay attention to is if you look at this right here, it has a grain direction on the front of it. Now this grain direction, if the camera will zoom, there we go. As you can see, that grain actually goes like this. That's the way the tree rings were. Now I'm drawing this in a heavy Sharpie marker. I wouldn't suggest doing that on your regular board, but I want you to be able to see that. So that's the way the grain direction's going on that board. The grain direction on this board, if you can follow that dark ring right there, goes like this. And the grain direction on this one, if you can see it, goes like this. So those are the rings of the tree. So if the tree was growing, and people often say, if you want to count the rings of a tree, that you'd be able to tell how old something is. Well, that's true because what happens is the light rings are usually your summer times and your dark rings are when the tree dies in the winter or it goes dormant and it doesn't collect as much water. So it goes light, dark, light, dark. So every 2 rings is usually a year. Now, the importance of these rings is you want to alternate your grains. So you don't want all of your grains going like this. So if one was down, the other one would want to be up. So then you would glue your boards together like that. That's for a 2-board glue up. For a 3-board glue up, you want to make sure that you have 1 down, 1 up, and then your last one would be down. So it would go down, up, and down. Now when you go to glue that, the importance is that you don't have a big gap or a big lip. Right now, I previously went back and jointed each end of the end boards, which this would be an end board, because if you look here, I didn't joint it. It has a rough surface. This one, the middle board, I jointed this edge and this edge so that it can marry against the outside ones. And then this one, I jointed this edge, but did not joint this edge. As you can see, it still has saw blade marks. So the way I want to put that together is with clamps. So I'm going to put this over here so that you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And we're going to glue this together. So the first thing you want to do, let me make sure that this is high enough. There we go. All right. The first thing you want to do is grab a bottle of glue out of the tool panel. I like to use either probably a 2-foot roller. You could use a 1 foot if it's a smaller Glueup. You need 3 clamps. So we have 1 clamp. Now the 2 bottom clamps you want to be the exact same brand or the exact same style. So as you can see, the odd man out is this one. Don't put that against another one because they're not going to be the same height. There's a difference in height on these, which it's not that big of a deal, but you're going to struggle a little bit if you're a first-time person gluing up boards. You're going to struggle a little bit when you go to put them together. So try to grab 2 clamps of the same brand. So I have this one and this one, and this one we're going to put aside for now. Now the first thing I want to do is open these up. And the next thing I want to do is I want to open the clamps up all the way. So I open them all the way out on both clamps. There we go. I take my 3 boards. I got 1 up, 1 down, and 1 up. I can bring those all to the end. I can bring my clamps in. Now a lot of you are saying, Mr. Wells, you forgot the glue. I know. I don't ever glue up a board unless I know that it can be put together without glue. Because the only thing glue is going to do is make a big mess of your project if the boards don't go together properly and seamlessly. So what I like to do, I like to start with one end and get them flush. This is a little bit tight, I'm going to wiggle it out a little bit. There we go. I want to start one end flush, and then I want to start on either my left side or my right side to glue up. So what I do is I push down on the middle, I push down on each board, like so, and I snug one side up. Now, what you're trying to do is you do not want a big step. So if you can catch your fingers on these and there's big bumps or steps, you have to remember if this board is sticking up a 1/16, then this board is sticking down a 1/16. So in order to make this board flat later, you're going to have to run it through the planer and you're going to lose a minimum of an 1/8. Most of the time you only have an 1/8 to play with. So if you screw that up and you run it through the planer and it gets too thin, so if you needed the legs of your footstool or the top of your table to be 3/4 and you start it with 7/8 material, what would happen is these would be garbage because they wouldn't be able to fit in here because you'd have to take too much material off because you had too big of a step here. So you have to make sure you have a nice flat surface when you go to glue. Now you don't go all the way to the end clamp. Now you grab your second clamp. Now what you want to do is if there's a bump here, which I have a touch of a bump here, a little bit over a fingernail, what I can do is I can actually grab this board and bring it up. Where you're like, hold on, Mr. Wells, you have a huge gap here now. I know, we're going to push that back out later. So we're going to go like this. We're going to push this down. We're going to tighten this up. There we go. Now, I'm flat here. I'm flat in the middle. The last thing I need to do is flatten out the end. So I'm going to push down, and push down. Sometimes it takes a partner. We got this one pretty good. If you don't have a partner, what you can do is actually take a C-clamp, and I'll grab one. You can actually take a C-clamp because we have a little bit of a gap right here, and you can actually turn the C-clamp down to make it flush at the end if you're having trouble, because this is being held by the clamp. This is being held by the clamp. Now, when you get to the end, sometimes you have a little bit of a situation, and it doesn't want to pull out. So put your C-clamp on there. There it is. Now we're nice and flush. That acts as your second hand, and then you can tighten your third clamp. Then you can take this C-clamp off. So now you're flush, and this board's ready to go. So I was able to do it without glue. Now it's time to add the glue. So we take these back apart. Now where do most kids screw up? They forget when they add the glue that they have to pay attention to the grain type. So I'm going to lean this board up like this. I'm going to lean this board up like this. and this board up like this. Now when you go to put glue, you want a nice translucent, about an 1/8 inch bead when you go to take it. 1/8 inch bead, 1/8 inch bead. Now your middle side is going to have to get some glue on the opposite side, but let's get this stuff smeared in. Take it like so. You want to make sure that the glue is on every surface area of the board. You just don't want to take and run a strip down and glue your board together, because eventually what's going to happen is it's not going to spread out like you think it would, and your project will fall apart, because it'll only glue on one section. If you can see this, there's glue all the way down that board and on every area that it's going to touch. You do the same thing on the other two boards. Just use your finger. Don't be afraid, it's not going to hurt you. If you don't like to use your finger, you can grab a chip brush or paintbrush, a piece of scrap wood, and then all the way down. You want to do that on all three boards. And then you're going to have to do it on both sides of this middle board. So let's get this one. You can cheat doing this a little bit if you want. Once you become familiar with it and you know what you're doing, you can actually take and put a little bit of extra glue on both boards and then just kind of smear them together, and it'll kind of work it around. Now I'm going to do the middle one. That needs to get glue on this side. Now the way glue works is it actually pushes inside of the cells. When the clamps push it together, it actually pushes that glue inside. It acts like a sponge. So it pushes that glue and it penetrates. That's why you need clamps to hold it together, because the pressure on it will actually push the glue into the cells of the wood, which causes a better bond. So what I do with this, I stick it under here. There you go. It'll dry up, you're done with it. Now, what you want to do, you got to make sure that you got these in order the correct way. So this one's going to go down, this one's going to go up, and this one's going to go down. Oh, I messed up. Hold on. This one's going to go, there we go. And then this one's going to go down. That's why it's important to draw on the end of these, because it's easy once you get them tilted up on end to really forget which way they're supposed to go. So now we have up, down, and up. We're going to do the same thing that we did before, but now what we're going to do is we're going to take a paper towel and slide it under your clamp so that you don't have to clean this mess up later. So we slide that under there, rip it off, make sure it's going to go under the glue joint, and we get our one side flush, and we start to clamp it. There we go. Remember, your goal is to make sure that they're nice and flush. This one's done. Oh, slid a little bit. Sometimes when you add the glue, it acts like a lubricant, and then the boards will actually slide up and down. So there we go. There's our first one. Then we go to our middle clamp. There we go. I'm going to pick up on this one. This one's already flush. Pick up on the center one. And tighten that one. And then push down on this. I'm going to grab my C-clamp that acts as a third hand for me. I'm going to tighten this up so that it brings it flush. If you want, if you can't move this one by hand, grab another C-clamp. Push it down. There we go. Now, as you can see, there's some glue that's going to bead up on this. Don't smear that glue around. Later on, now we can take the C-clamp back off. It's tight. Now go through, give it a good tighten. Don't be afraid to put some pressure on it. There we go. There we go. And there we go. Let it sit overnight. Tomorrow, when you come in, the next day after you do a glue up, what you're going to do is just take a glue scraper. Take a glue scraper out of the cover, chip off that excess glue. Let me remind you one thing. Right now, it's not that important that you have safety goggles on when you're gluing. But when you chip this glue off, you better make sure you put safety goggles on, because when you're chipping like this, it's one of my #1 reasons why kids get something in their eye, because that glue is hard and it chips off of there and it goes up in their eye. So make sure you have safety goggles on when you're doing that. All you do when you're done with that, you want to put your name on here. And I like to also put my period so that if it gets unglued, we know whose period it is. So we'll call this period 10, which we don't have. All right, take these, lean it around the room somewhere. I'll put it over here, no one's here anyway. We have easy cleanup now. This is the paper towels, all the glue that dripped out went on there. If you missed any, just wipe it off. If you have to, grab a wet paper towel. Put your glue and clamps away. Oh, what you can do when you do your dry clamp is you can actually grab your roller and set it on your board to make sure that it doesn't wobble, so to make sure that it's nice and straight. I forgot to go over that, but you would just, if I glued this table up, I would want to go like this and see if there's a gap underneath it there. So that's what the roller's for. Put the roller back, clamps go back, and that's it. That's a glue up.